Welcome to Power Up, the podcast that uncovers the unique challenges women leaders face today. Join your hosts, Nat and Kristen, as we dive into the tough topics and provide actionable insights you can apply right now. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. Called the visibility paradox, research from the Harvard Business Review found that women are promoted based on their performance, men, on the other hand, on their potential. So we have to take proactive steps to ensure our work is visible.
And recognized.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it's so interesting, all of these things. It's hard to know whether it's correlation or causation. Is it that women are socialized to not talk about our work and to not network transactionally, and that leads people making hiring and promotion decisions only having performance to go off? Or is it that that's ignored because of deeply rooted biases? We actually don't know, but we can take control regardless.
Yeah, today's Minisode is all about increasing our visibility. I'm just going to say this a couple times. Your work does not speak for itself. Your work does not speak for itself, nor do your accomplishments. If you don't tell people about your accomplishments or the great work that you're doing, no one's going to know.
No, and it's funny because at school, we don't get taught this. You succeed at school and girls tend to do better at school by working really hard, by knuckling down, finishing the essays, doing their exams, getting the results. And nothing at school prepares you for the full second half. And it is a literal half of your career, which is visibility.
Yeah.
So in your career, success actually is value and visibility. And if you only do one of those things, you will be half as effective. And many of us tend towards adding value because that is what we've been doing all our lives to be successful. And so we really buckle down and work really hard. And in the meantime, there's other people who focus a lot more on visibility, which is why that mediocre person who sits next to you has rocketed up in their career because people know what they do while you're doing the work.
And we're all about self-leadership, which is why we are sharing 3 easy ways that you can take control and be more visible. But first, Nat, can you think of a time where you went out of your way to have your work be visible?
Well, I was always a consultant, so my work was always visible because I'd be presenting it.
True.
And I would have done it. So I have spent a lot of my career presenting, firstly, pitches and plans and all, in my opinion, on why the idea that they, or the thing that they think they need done, may not be the right thing to do. And then also delivering work and navigating, pushback and feedback and all of that sort of stuff. So I feel like that has just been ingrained in, you can't survive as a consultant unless you're able to do that.
And have everyone know your value and what you're doing.
Yeah.
Now. Totally.
Yeah. What about you?
I've got a strength of mine from the Gallup Strengths test, Clifton Strengths, and one of them is significance. And that was how I got my work visible, was I just happened to have an innate strength that made me want to align with the sexy projects. And so when there was something new, innovative, big, strategic, important, I just had a natural inclination of, I want to be on that piece of work because I always wanted to connect my value and meaning at work to, I usually say moving the needle, but I really wanted my work to do something. And I understood growth from a very early age. And so for me, I wanted to be on the projects that brought the company forward.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I also think a caveat to that is not everyone has that strength.
No.
And that's okay. And we're talking about visibility. Not everyone is going to be the person delivering the giant update to the room or to the team. Not everyone does jobs that put them in a position that they can move around. Sometimes, and this is incredible, we're actually doing our newsletter this week on leadership versus management. Some roles are behind the scenes. And if you are writing code that changes the world, you aren't necessarily going to be in the middle of every meeting. If you are running an operational process that makes sure that business functions smoothly, again, those are equally as critical, but not necessarily as visible by default. So these tactics work for you as well.
Yeah, and that's why we're going to go quickly into the 3. We've got 10 minutes because this is a mini-sode that we want to do in under 15. So bear with us. The very first one is to master the pre-meeting chat. This is one we love. And actually, you can talk about more than just weather at the pre-meeting chat. And we've done an entire episode on this. It is number 60. Take a listen to some questions, tactics, some ways to master that very important, it can be online or in-person pre-meeting chat.
Great. And we often don't make time for it because we don't see it as part of our jobs. This is that whole thing about not learning throughout our lives and careers about the importance of visibility. We often tend to rush in, do the meeting and leave, whereas building those relationships, building rapport, really having those little sideline water cooler chats is one of the key parts to making sure your work is visible, but it also has some wonderful other benefits, right? Like building relationships, finding out what's happening across the organization, getting wider contextual stuff and opportunities. So there's multiple benefits, but even purely from a visibility point of view, so easy. Just book in 2 minutes. Make sure you've locked out your calendar 5 minutes early before each meeting to turn up, have a deep breath, and chat to people.
Yeah. And you caught me out actually the other day. I'll tell the story in a minute. But ever since the age of, I think I was 2 years old when my mum lost me, I walked out of the house naked with nothing but a diaper on, and I'd wandered down the street about 4 blocks away.
She still does this.
With my diaper. And I knocked on a house because I knew this house had kids. I was 2, I kid you not, naked with a diaper. And it must have been a pull-up. And I knocked on the door and I said, can you play? Like I knew they had kids and I babbled out, can these kids play with me? And that was how my mum ultimately met her best friend, because this woman had to find my house and
find her child.
Here is your child. And all to say, I love making friends. So relationship building is really important to me, and having shared connections and really cool humans around me. So this is my weakness as well, is that I always start with the personal. So I might not be curious about the strategic and what's big on your mind and what are your goals for 2025 and what's keeping you up at night. Those are very strategic, businessy questions that I need to master. But I go straight to the let's be friends and talk about sport. So this ends.
She will find. We had a conversation yesterday and she peppered this guy with so many questions about sport until she found one sport that he actually did. And I was like, this lady's committed. You're going to have to come up with a sport, dude.
He's a strategic.
She will not give up.
He's possibly a strategic partner. And I was like, I got to quickly build rapport with this guy. So I could see he was a little bit muscly. He was clearly fit. He was 10. So I was like, oh, what have you been doing in the ocean? He was like, no way, too many sharks. And I was like, oh, have you been on the golf course? No. And then I said, oh, do you wear spandex and hop on a bike? Which I don't. But anyway, we had a great laugh. Finally happened upon rugby. So that was cool. and then that busted me. So anyway, master the pre-meeting chat and do as I do and make friends about a shared interest outside of work. Just ask great questions about what's keeping them busy. What are they currently doing outside of work?
Yeah.
Or master the strategic chat. What's keeping you up at night? What's big that you're working on? What are you really proud of this year? What are you looking forward to next year as it relates to the business?
We also overheard in the airport the other day a guy on the phone talking about insurance. Remember that?
Oh my gosh,
and he was talking about insurance claims. Kristen was like, do not do anything dodgy in your car. Like they really talk about that stuff in public.
He was like, what I can see is this person's gone over a curb, clearly.
Yeah, it was so interesting. And that just reminded me that other people's work is so interesting. Yeah. So if you were to have a conversation with that guy, it would have been so fascinating to hear a little bit more about the process of claims and how they investigate them. So always great opportunities, which takes us to point 2, which is claiming your work. We say there is no I in we, so don't use we when you are talking about work that you have done.
Yeah, and I think there was this big movement of collaboration and teamwork. And I remember applying for jobs must have graduated from uni in my 20s, and it was all about collaboration and teamwork. There must have been a really big leadership movement that people all of a sudden realized that was important. And so that was at the top of your cover letter and CV. And as a result, we've adopted this, we delivered this and we did that. But Nat and I, on the other end of interviews, interviewing 40 people, in one very short amount of time, when they start saying we can never figure out what it was that they did.
Yeah, and a power suiter recently got into this pickle too. She got this feedback when she was turned down for a job that she used the word we too much, and she was pretty gutted. But I said, that's actually incredibly powerful feedback, because what they were trying to tell you is they couldn't tell what you contributed. And this is where context comes into play. If you are sharing it to an all hands meeting, you're using the word we. You're saying this is what the team's contributed. This is what we've achieved together, because in that context, you are making your team successful. When you are applying for a job, there is no team to be successful. It is you that needs to be successful. So always just take a step up and go, what am I trying to convey here? Is it something that I've done, or is it something that we've done? And if you are in a position where you need to talk about what you've done, use the word I.
Yeah.
And it's actually like I had to force myself to do this because I think we're all in the same boat that we often say we. And after leaving Hatch specifically, I was always saying, we did this. And then I'm like, no, actually, I did that. And I've started to just be much more comfortable with saying, I actually did that. Yeah. And that helps other people place me in the world rather than going, okay, great. As a general company, you did this thing, to go, oh, that is the work you contributed. And that is why often now we get opportunities. So we get opportunities. I get more opportunities to talk about various things and very specific things that people now know is the value that I brought to the table.
Yeah.
So very easy. Swap we for I. It's not that hard. It's one word change and it makes a huge difference.
And I would add, also do it internally, and just think of an elevator ride. If you had a few minutes with a senior stakeholder, someone that's influential in your business, perfect opportunity. If they ask you, what's keeping you busy? What are you currently working on? I am doing this so that we can do this as a company, move the company forward, drive efficiency, save the company money. I have delivered this recently, really proud about it. So again, not just for job seeking, but internally as well.
Absolutely. And you don't have to claim the whole project. You can say, I did this bit to contribute to this project. Be real, be genuine, be truthful, but you can find, you work 8 hours a day, probably at least. You can find in that 8 hours the things that you specifically did. And elevator pitches is a great example here. And we should link to our article on how to do them. And do we have a podcast on elevator pitches? Because we've been teaching a lot of people our mini masterclass on elevator pitches recently. And when you hear people deliver them and use the word I, you are without exception, blown away by the capability and the unique capability of people. And it is not showing off. It is fascinating.
Yeah, so we'll do one.
Absolutely recommend I.
The final point, and we've got 2 minutes to do this, is to share your knowledge and successes, learnings on an internal platform. Most of you will be using Teams, Slack, some might be Yammer. Please find a success channel, create a success channel, or post in a general channel where it is visible. Hey everyone, wanted to update you on a really successful delivery of. Talk about the accomplishments, why it was important, celebrate the team members, tag them in that post, but please be the one that instigates that celebratory message so that you are tied to that piece of work.
I also love for those who that feels like a big step is to share knowledge. And I love this. And engineers are actually particularly good at this, where they will share a piece of code or a new technique to do something. And that again adds authority because you know that person knows that and is interested in it. Book recommendations, always widely appreciated. Again, embeds the idea you are interested in that and know that stuff. Even in the world of AI, the rise of AI, sharing an AI tool that you use and the way you use it to do your job better.
Yes.
All of these things really build authority with what you do and add value to other people. So it's visibility through adding value, which feels for a lot more comfortable than sharing successes to start. And when you get a lot of great feedback on those knowledge shares, you will find it much easier to roll in a little success in there.
I went to this great event last week and it was about elevator pitch and sharing your accomplishments. And again, if you don't share them, no one knows. And so how do you strike that balance between, humility, humbleness? And there was a really perfect recipe to do this. To share your success, go ahead and be proud of what you've done because you have done that. But then at the very end, go, here are the 2 lessons learned. Or here's a really great lesson that we learned as a result of this. It could be a little failure, could be oops, could be this is how we do things slightly differently. But it balances that success with a little bit of, hey, not everything was perfect. And here's some great learnings to pass on as well. And that is a really nice balance, I thought.
Absolutely. And if you're doing feedback regularly within your team, you should have things that went really well and things that could be improved. And that information is really, really useful.
Yeah.
I also spoke to someone last week in an elevator after doing elevator pitches. And she was like, how do you navigate the fine line between saying this stuff and showing off? And I was like, how often do people tell you what they do and you cringe and go, how awful and yuck? And she looked at me and went, never. And then she went, oh, I get it. And it's funny how we assume other people will think that about us, but we very rarely, if ever, think that about other people. So go forth and give the gift of value and visibility to other people because people love to learn about each other.
And you deserve it. And I'm going to end on a quote. By
Kristen's Quote Corner.
By Steve
Just
Case.
imagine you naked with a diaper on saying this.
Thank you for that visual for everyone, Nat. Success isn't about who does the best work. It's about who gets noticed doing the best work. So go forth and be noticed, and catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.